My wife disappeared for 24 hours and came back laughing like nothing happened. But when she slipped and admitted why she really stayed at Ryan's place, I filed for divorce and walked away forever. My name is Daniel, I am 34, and I was born and raised in the wide open spaces of Texas. For 6 long years, I shared a marriage with Emily, who was 32 at the time. To everyone looking in from the outside, we looked like the couple who had it all figured out. People saw us at barbecues, family gatherings, and dinner parties, and they whispered quietly about how strong and steady we seemed. We had a comfortable home that carried the warmth of our combined efforts, we had financial stability, and we were even talking seriously about starting a family soon. From my side, I believed with every fiber of my being that our marriage was built on the cornerstones that actually matter: loyalty, trust, and mutual respect. But what I eventually learned, through a shattering experience, was that people can preach those values loudly until the day comes when their commitment to them is actually tested. And when that test comes, you discover who they truly are. It all began on what seemed like a completely ordinary Friday evening. Emily walked into the living room after work, a smile resting on her lips but a certain distance lingering in her eyes, and she told me that she was going out for drinks with some of her work friends. It wasn't something out of the ordinary because every now and then she did go out for occasional gatherings with her colleagues. I trusted her entirely at that time, so I didn't feel a knot of worry or suspicion. I simply kissed her goodbye, told her not to stay out too late, and then settled back into the house we built together. The evening seemed like any other. I poured myself a glass of whiskey, picked out a movie, and let the hours pass in quiet expectation of her eventual return. At first, as the night stretched on, I didn't think much of it. Friends could keep talking, drinks could stretch longer than expected, and it was easy to imagine that she was just caught up enjoying herself. But when the clock struck midnight and my phone remained quiet, I started to notice that familiar prickle of concern. I sent her a quick message, just 3 simple words: "Hey, you good?" I expected the little dots of a reply to bounce back quickly, but the silence remained heavy. 1 o'clock turned into 2, and that silence began to feel more like a wall closing in on me. I tried calling, straight to voicemail. I tried again, the same cold mechanical voice, not the warm tone of my wife. I lay in bed that night, eyes fixed on the ceiling, heart drumming with every passing hour as the sun's first rays began to slip through the curtains. It wasn't like Emily to just vanish. She had always let me know where she was, even if it was late or if plans changed. The hours that passed felt like they were carved with fear, and I kept trying to push back the darker thoughts that began to crawl in. What if something had happened to her? What if she had been in an accident? And then, the thought I hated myself for having, what if she was with someone else? Saturday morning came, and with it, no word from Emily. I called again. No answer. I texted again. Nothing. Every scenario played out in my mind, each one more disturbing than the last. I paced the house, checked the driveway every hour like some desperate fool hoping to see her car finally pull in, and with every empty glance, my anger started to build alongside my fear. By the time Saturday evening rolled around, nearly a full day later, I wasn't just worried. I was boiling with a mix of rage and betrayal I couldn't yet explain. Then, at exactly 9 o'clock that Saturday night, the front door opened. Emily walked in as if she had simply been out running errands for an hour. Her heels were dangling from her hand, her feet were bare. Her hair was messy in a way that suggested not just a long night, but an entire day and night away. She stopped dead when she saw me standing there in the living room, waiting. My words burst out sharper than I intended. "Where the hell have you been, Emily?" She froze, her eyes flickering away from mine before she muttered softly, almost carelessly, "Out." Just that one word. I felt my chest tighten. Out? For 1 whole day without a call, without a text, without answering your phone? Do you know how worried I've been? I demanded, my voice rising now. She didn't offer an explanation. She simply kept walking toward the hallway like she wanted to brush past me, head straight into the shower, and pretend the last 24 hours hadn't happened. That's when something inside me snapped. I stepped forward, blocking her path. "Don't you dare walk away from me." Tell me where you were. The room filled with a suffocating silence until finally, she turned around, arms crossed, a look of defiance in her eyes. Fine. I was at Ryan's birthday party. Her words hit me like a bucket of ice water dumped straight over my head. Ryan. The name alone was enough to make my vision blur. Ryan was her ex, the man she had been with for years before she ever met me. The same man she once told me was nothing but history, a closed chapter in her life. Now she was standing in front of me saying she had disappeared for an entire day because of him. I could hardly process it. My mind kept repeating the words, trying to make sense of them. She didn't stop there either. When I asked again, my voice low and shaking, she rolled her eyes. The party went late. Everyone was drinking. I crashed on his couch. Nothing happened. She said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like a married woman spending the night at her ex's place was something that shouldn't even raise an eyebrow. I tried to explain calmly how it looked, how she had ignored my calls, how I had spent 24 hours not knowing if she was safe or dead. Instead of acknowledging any of that, she called me insecure. She said I was overthinking, that it was just one night, that I was acting like she had committed some kind of huge crime. And then she said the words that would ring in my head for days to come. Grow up, Daniel. This is embarrassing. You should trust me more. That moment was the beginning of the end. Not just because of where she had been, but because of how little she respected my worry, my fear, my pain. It wasn't just one night. It was a choice. And in that instant, I realized that the woman I thought I had married was not standing in front of me anymore. The days that followed felt like I was living inside a fog, a heavy curtain of silence that wrapped around our once comfortable home. We barely spoke to each other, and when we did, the conversations felt like sharp blades rather than soft threads tying us together. Every word that left Emily's mouth carried the same message. You're overreacting, Daniel. Nothing happened. You're making this bigger than it is. You should trust me more. But with every repetition of those words, something inside me grew colder, more distant. Because the truth was simple, it wasn't just about whether something physical had happened. It was about the disrespect, the silence, and the choices that she had made over and over, again across that long and torturous night. By Monday morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee, watching the sunlight pour through the windows, like a harsh spotlight on the decision I already knew I had to make. Emily walked in, her hair pulled back, her eyes tired but not remorseful, her pajamas hanging off her frame. She looked at me expectantly, as if I would shrug everything off, as if I would be the one to apologize for questioning her. But I had reached my limit. I looked at her calmly and said, Emily, I've made my decision. I'm filing for divorce. The mug in her hand nearly slipped as her eyes went wide with shock. What? Daniel, no, wait. You can't be serious. Over one night. Her voice cracked, laced with both anger and desperation. But my reply was steady, almost too steady. Yes, because that one night showed me everything I needed to know about this marriage. If you wanted to go to Ryan's party, you could have told me. If you got too drunk, you could have called. But instead, you disappeared, you ignored my calls, and when I asked for respect, you gave me insults. That's not something I can overlook. Her hands trembled as she slammed the mug down on the counter. You're acting childish, Daniel. Marriage is supposed to be about forgiveness, about working through mistakes. People slip up. You don't just throw away 6 years over something like this. Her words were desperate, yet they still carried that same edge of blame, as if I was the fool for expecting basic respect. But to me, this wasn't a simple mistake. Forgetting to buy groceries is a mistake. Forgetting to take out the trash is a mistake. What she had done was deliberate. She had made a choice to go, to stay, to ignore, to dismiss, to belittle. And when she tried to wrap that choice in the thin blanket of forgiveness, it only highlighted how little she truly understood. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in our house shifted into something almost unbearable. Emily tried every tactic she could think of. One moment, she would sit next to me on the couch, her hand lightly resting on my arm as she whispered, Daniel, you're being dramatic. We'll laugh about this one day. But I didn't laugh. I didn't smile. I barely acknowledged her touch. When that didn't work, her tactics shifted. She raised her voice, slammed doors, called me pathetic for considering divorce over what she called one harmless night. But even then, I didn't rise to her anger. I stayed calm, which seemed to frustrate her even more. And then came the guilt. One night, well past midnight, she crawled into bed beside me, her voice trembling as she whispered, "I don't love Ryan. He's just a friend. Nothing happened. You're my husband. Please don't throw this away." But I didn't respond. Because the truth was clear. If I truly meant that much to her, she never would have put me in that position to begin with. I contacted a lawyer that week, and each step felt like I was cutting away another piece of my life. The paperwork was heavy in my hands, each signature feeling like a nail sealed into the coffin of a marriage I once believed was built to last forever. But alongside the pain, there was a strange sense of relief, like I was finally taking control of my own life again. Emily, however, didn't stop. She called my parents behind my back, trying to paint herself as the victim, saying that I was abandoning her over nothing. But when I told my parents the truth, they didn't flinch. My father looked me dead in the eye and said, "You deserve better, son." My mother simply hugged me and whispered, "Don't let her make you question your worth." Their support was the anchor that kept me from drifting back into the storm Emily was creating. Then came the night that everything finally broke. We were arguing again in the kitchen, voices sharp against the silence of the house. It started with the same refrain. "You're making this into something it's not. You don't understand. You should have trusted me." But then, in a burst of frustration, she blurted out something she would never be able to take back. "Fine. Maybe part of me wanted to feel wanted again. Maybe I missed the way Ryan used to treat me, but I didn't sleep with him." Her words cut through me like a knife. I stood frozen, my chest tight, the air in the room suddenly heavier than stone. It wasn't just about a party, or drinks, or crashing on a couch. It was about validation, about seeking from another man the attention and desire she should have been seeking from her husband. She realized too late what she had admitted. Her hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with panic, as if she could pull the words back out of the air and shove them down her throat. But it was too late. I leaned back against the counter, my voice strangely calm. "So that's what this was about." She tried to backtrack, her words tripping over each other. "Daniel, no, that's not what I meant. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking." But I held up a hand to stop her. "Don't. You've said enough." Her tears began to fall, her voice cracking as she reached for me. "It didn't mean anything. I swear. I love you, Daniel. You're my husband. Please don't leave me over this." But her promises felt hollow, like a song sung after the music had already stopped. The truth had already been spoken. She had stepped out of our marriage long before the words left her mouth. By the time the divorce was finalized, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger requires energy, and she had drained every ounce of it long before the papers were signed. What I felt instead was a strange mix of sadness and freedom, the heavy yet cleansing weight of closing a chapter that could never be rewritten. Emily showed up at my office one afternoon, her eyes red, her purse clutched to her chest like a lifeline. She begged, her voice cracking with desperation. "I made a mistake, Daniel. Please don't leave me. I'll prove to you I can change. Just give me one more chance." I looked at her for a long time, and for a brief second, I remembered the woman I had fallen in love with years ago. But then I remembered the lies, the silence, the disrespect, and that final confession. And the answer became clear. "You didn't just make a mistake," I said quietly. "You made a choice, and so am I." The final conversation came a few days before the divorce was finalized. She stood at my door, her eyes swollen, her voice shaking as she whispered, "Please don't do this. I'll change. I'll cut Ryan out completely. I'll go to therapy. Just don't give up on us." I let her in, but I didn't sit down. I stood there, calm, collected, and stronger than I had felt in months. "Emily," I said, "I hope one day you realize that love isn't just about saying the words. It's about the choices you make when temptation appears." And you made yours the night you walked out that door to Ryan's party. Her tears fell faster, her voice breaking. It was one night. It meant nothing. You're my husband. You're supposed to stand by me. I shook my head slowly. And you were supposed to stand by me too. But when I needed honesty, you gave me lies. When I needed reassurance, you gave me insults. When I needed respect, you gave me excuses. That's not marriage. That's not love. She collapsed onto the couch, her hands covering her face as she sobbed. I just wanted to feel wanted again. I wasn't thinking. I didn't mean to hurt you. But for the first time in months, I didn't feel anger or even hurt. I felt nothing but finality. I don't hate you, Emily, I said softly. But I can't stay married to someone who only realizes what they had when it's already gone. I deserve more than that. The papers were signed soon after. There was no dramatic ending, no explosive fight. Just signatures on paper that marked the quiet death of 6 years. Months later, I heard through mutual friends that Emily tried to reconnect with Ryan, but he wasn't interested. He had moved on long ago. She ended up alone. Meanwhile, I began rebuilding my life slowly, brick by brick, with new friendships, new routines, and a newfound strength I never knew I had. There were nights when I lay awake wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. But over time, I realized something important. Betrayal isn't always about physical cheating. Sometimes it's about lies, disrespect, and choices that show where someone's loyalty truly lies. And once trust is gone, love cannot survive. I walked away not because I was weak or childish, as Emily once claimed, but because I finally chose myself. And looking back now, I know that walking away was the strongest decision I ever made. Like and subscribe for more stories of strength, betrayal, and finding freedom.